Mr. Muiruri, are you present? Mr. Muiruri, are you present? Vincent, Mr. Vincent, Vincent Muiruri, sir, kindly confirm your presence. Mr. Muiruri, can you hear me? All the boys, good morning. Oh, no, 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 no. volume. D'accord.
All right, good morning. I hope you all can hear me. I hope you're enjoying your holiday. So this is Mr. Muiruri. I'm going to be taking you through the areas of concern as highlighted as far as English is concerned. So from what I received is that we need to look at oral skills and essay writing. So that's what I'll be taking you through. In case there is any question, you just unmute yourself and ask the question. I might not see a raised hand. You can also type a question on the chat. That will also work. So let's get straight to it. I'm going to start off with essay writing. So I know it's relatively new. So let's look at what exactly we are supposed to do to prepare ourselves for essay writing. I hope you can all see my screen.
Yeah.
So the first thing, this is a essay text, essay questions. The first and most important thing I always say is that it's interpretation of the question. Later on, after this, we're going to look at an example of a question. What essays are all about is the interpretation. If you understand the question, everything else is easy. So that's the first thing you need to do. Do you understand what the statement means? Because once you understand that, if you fail to understand the question, then you will answer it wrongly. So understand the question. How do you go about that? Identify keywords in a question. Like I'm saying, we're going to look at an example of a question later and see how to go about it. Once you identify the keywords, underline those keywords, you're on your way to understanding the question. The other thing you need to know is that almost all questions that are being asked in the KCSE this currently have what we call, or they have two parts. They have the two parts. The two parts, we divide them into the action and the reaction. There is a virtue or a vice. Most of these questions will either be talking about virtue, determination. They'll be talking about self-sacrifice. That's a virtue. And then a virtue always gets rewarded. That's what we say. So because of determination, there is success. Because of self-sacrifice, there is an aspect of reward, whichever it is. So that's the two-part question. A vice, a negative, something we do not advocate for. Greed, for example, it can be considered to be a vice. Betrayal, etc. Vices have punishment. So they always have two parts. You need to also see that. Can you actually identify the two parts of the question? Because once you identify the two parts, you must capture the two parts at the end of your paragraph. Now, then the other thing is, whatever I'm saying is that the question is two-sided. Therefore, you should ensure that your answer brings out the two sides. Your answer is that paragraph that you're going to look at. It brings out the two sides. That is the action part and the reaction part. If it's a vice, there is a vice, and then there is a punishment. If there's a virtue that you're talking about, by the end of your paragraph, you'll talk about a reward. So that's the first and the most important part. Understanding, interpreting the question, understanding the question. Now, once you've understood the question, you now go to the next step. And like I've told students before, I always say preparation is the most important part of essay writing. You have 50 minutes per essay. You have 2 hours and a half for 3 questions. There's the imaginative composition, then there is the 2 essays, one of the compulsory text and one on the optional text. That is approximately 50 minutes each. Take at least 15 minutes to prepare, because if you prepare well, everything else falls in place. So before you even start writing on your paper, these are the first things you do. So you've understood the question, you've interpreted the correct way. Now you go to outlining the points, which are pegged on what you interpreted. Is it a virtue? Yes. So if it's a virtue, we're getting a reward. If it's a vice, we're getting a punishment. So what are the points that would go hand in hand in answering this question? These points are very important, as you're going to see later, because they help you in writing your essay, the paragraphs. These points that you're outlining now will serve as your topical sentences later. So planning is key in all our undertakings, for it will determine the end results. Therefore, you should master the art of planning, as it sets precedence for a good essay. If you get it right from the onset, that is interpretation and planning, you're on the way to great performance. Come up with at least 4 characters that will support your argument. This will enable you to plan your essay. This stage helps you to come up with complete topic sentences. So now you've identified the question. Now the question you're answering is, which characters would bring out these aspects that I'm talking about? Sometimes you might find you don't necessarily have to, it can only be one character. You need to understand the question well. Sometimes even the question itself is going to give you, to limit you, using this and these characters. Explain. Sometimes it's open, you can use all the characters you have in the book. Again, so it's that's paramount. It all starts from interpretation of the question. So you understood the question from the get-go, that this can only be dealing with one character. Or the instructions are clear. We are dealing with one character or 2 characters. So identify those characters, whether they are 4 characters, because we're talking about 4 because of 4 paragraphs. But you can identify more. You can have less characters, but of course, these characters will have to bring out 4 points at least. So once you do that, these 4 characters, these 2 characters, or this 1 character, which 4 incidents, which 4 situations, which 4 events answer or respond to the question you've been asked? And you don't even need to stop yourself at 4 points. You remember, you're still planning. You can even list down as many points as possible. You can list 5, 6, 7, whichever you find you're comfortable listing. Then once you're done, listing those points, you now start asking yourself, from these 6 points I have, I only need 4 points.
Economics.
Please mute your speakers. You only have 4 points that you needed to write. So from these 6, 7 points that I have, or these topic sentences that I've written down, which one do I feel I am comfortable and I can get enough information on? And then you can now pick the 4. And you say, these 4, I am comfortable, I can handle them well. I think I have enough illustrations and evidence from the text to go and write them. And as you are going to see, as we progress discussing this paper, the essay writing, this planning is important essentially in every step we're going to look at, because it helps you not to do some of the things we are going to talk about later that you should not do, especially when you come to the end of the essay, when you're talking about the conclusion. So you have the 4 points, and I'm sure these 4 points, I can clearly handle them, I can clearly illustrate them, I have enough evidence from the text to write them down. So you now have your 4 points, you have your essay plan set. Note, the whole of this time, we've not even started writing the essay. We've used, like I've said, use at least, okay, let's say between 10 to 15 minutes to just plan, to understand the question, to list the topic sentences, and to understand and to find out how much information you have for each. Because then from there, when you move into the next step, it flows into each other. You're not going to get halfway through writing your essay and you're like, you remember, oh, yeah, there's an important point I forgot. I think I need to put it in here. You can do that now because all your points are listed. You have made them somewhere and you have a good plan. So I usually advise, when you get your papers, you get your question papers, maybe it's a full scarp or it's an examination sheet, you can just go to the back of the sheet. Maybe, especially for most of the time you have enough sheets, even extra. Go to the back of the sheet, if you have a pencil, do this outlining. Do the outlining without hurry, don't hurry through it. Just do the outlining. So that once you're done and you're done writing your essay, you can rub it off, or you can just cancel it if that sheet is going to be, there's no question, there's no problem. The planning is not going to be penalized. So you do it at your own leisure. Don't rush through. Because I see that immediately you get the paper, most of the time, a student will go straight into writing. What exactly is it that you're writing about? And that's where you find yourself halfway. You find that you're having a paragraph with 2 points, 2 topic sentences in one paragraph. However well you illustrate those 2 points, most likely the only thing you're going to get is 1 point, because of the mixing of ideas. And most likely, if you mix these 2 ideas, it means that you didn't develop the first idea well. You also don't develop the second idea. So you only get 1 point for that paragraph, for the idea of 1. But if you have a good plan, it's not going to be possible for you to mix up points. It's very easy for you to do something that's constructive. So once you have outlined the points and you have your topic sentences and you're comfortable with the topic sentences, we now go to the next step. Now, before I go to the next step, maybe just a highlight, or just a revamp of what we've discussed. I'm sure you've discussed this with your teachers, is that essay questions in paper 3 require you to write 6 paragraphs, maximum of 6 paragraphs, minimum of 6 paragraphs. These 6 paragraphs are divided into 2 parts. Let me call them 3 parts. We have the introduction, we have the body, we have the conclusion. The introduction is the first paragraph. The body constitutes 4 paragraphs. And then the conclusion is the last paragraph, total of 6. That all amounts to 20 marks. The introduction gives you 2 points. If you do a good introduction, you get 2 marks for the introduction. Each paragraph of the body, well written, comprehensively written, will give you 3 marks. And then the conclusion again gives you 2 marks. So if you do the calculations, you find that they total up to 16 marks. So the 4 marks that are left or that remain are what we refer to as the language mark. The language mark is allocated according to your score in the body. That is the 4 paragraphs that are discussing the question. It is not mathematical that, okay, there's the demarcation of the marks. So if you get between 0 in body to 4 marks, you get 1 mark for language. And it transcends all the way to 9 marks to 12 marks. You get the 4 marks, the full 4 marks for language. However, it doesn't mean that you automatically will get that mark, because sometimes you have a lot of, we don't mark grammar in essays, but the examiner could look at some of the structure or the construction and decide to deduct a mark from the language. For example, you didn't have an introduction, but you scored 10 in the body. They might deduct 1 mark. So instead of scoring the 4 marks in the language, you score 3. So that's why every single part of this essay, the paragraphs are very important. They can result, or they can they can result in the deduction of marks despite the fact. So that is the basic outline. So we have 6 paragraphs. First paragraph is the introduction, 4 paragraphs that are constituting the body, the 4 paragraphs that you're talking about that will be guided by the topic sentences, and then we have the conclusion. So totaling to 6 paragraphs. Nothing more, nothing less. You do more, again, there is a number of words that you're supposed to use. So if you exceed the number of words, you get a deduction of 2 points. If you do 8 paragraphs, and let's say you have done 6 paragraphs of the body, this is dependent. You might find some examiners will be told, mark everything. Then they'll only take the 4 best paragraphs. And then at the end of the day, you have exceeded the number of words. So they'll still deduct 2 marks. So that's why I'm talking about the planning being very important. Because if you did your planning, you don't need to go to the 6 paragraphs. You're already sure that I have 4 paragraphs that I'm very comfortable doing. And I will not most likely infringe on the exceeding of the words or the number of words. The other thing is, you write too many paragraphs, like I'm saying, sometimes you find students will split points. You have 1 point, but you split it into 2 paragraphs. So what that means is the maximum you can again score for 1 paragraph is 1 point. The other point or the other paragraph will be termed as a new paragraph, not as a continuation of the first. And you might not score a point. So you end up having 8 paragraphs, scoring 4 points. Then you get deducted 2 marks. It's counterproductive. So that's why I'm talking about 6 paragraphs maximum, 6 paragraphs minimum. Anything else is going to be counterproductive most likely. So once you're done with that, now that we are on the same page as the requirements, we move now to writing the essay. And the first thing we look at is the introduction. Writing the introduction. As you can see here, the introduction falls on the first paragraph. And that sounds, I don't want to sound like, I don't want to be Captain Obvious, but this is very important. Introduction falls on the first paragraph. Sometimes, like I'm saying, you're in your rush and a hurry and you realize that this is a good question, I think I can answer it. And you go straight into your first point and your second point. You find a student will get the first point in and they're realizing, oh, we're supposed to write an introduction, but it's okay. I can introduce it afterwards. That will not count as an introduction. Once you start without an introduction, everything else after that is not considered, or it's not going to be considered. You cannot consider anything else after that to be introduction. So I'll assume you started with the body and that's it. So the introduction must fall on the first paragraph. Like I've said, it earns you 2 marks. A well-written introduction will earn you 2 marks. it should address both sides of the question. Like we looked at as we were talking about the interpretation of the question, is that a question has two parts. You must address both parts in your introduction. So the two parts, there is the action and the reaction. There is the virtue, if you're talking about a virtue, and the reward. There is the vice and the punishment. So your introduction should bring that out. Your introduction at the end of the day should be drawn from the text. If you're going, as you're going to look at the types of introduction, even if you do a general introduction, for example, which I will discuss later, you should mention what text you're discussing because the question is telling you. So for example, in your case, the essays you're going to do can come from the 5 books you're doing. It can come from the Fathers of Nations, come from the Samaritan. If it's the optional text, you have Artists of the Floating World, A Silent Song, Parliament of Owls. You must mention it. You must be seen to integrate the text into your introduction. Note, when writing your introduction, you should take note of the following. You should demonstrate your understanding of the question. I'll repeat, you should demonstrate your understanding of the question. Now, in demonstrating your understanding of the question, do not do the following because it happens. Do not define terms. Determination leads to success. I'm just using an example. And then you go ahead and explain what determination is, what success is. You do not do that. So that is a no-go zone. You don't define terms. But remember, we are talking about, you need to show the understanding of the question, but do not define terms. The other thing you don't do is do not rewrite any words or phrase in the question. Instead, paraphrase. That is, use your own words. And for example, if you say, the question says materialism, you can say, or you can use the word greed. If the question says sacrifice, you may use the word selflessness in the introduction. So depending on what the question is asking, the question has stated, determination leads to success. Do not use the same words in your introduction because then you will not have displayed your understanding, or you not have demonstrated an understanding to the question. So sometimes you find a student will go back and just say, determination leads to success as it's evident in, basically you just rephrase the question, you have not showed any understanding, you lose out on the 2 marks. So try and rephrase. Look for a synonym. Look for other words that would fit in or that would mean the same as the words used in the question, but not the same words. So that is how you show your understanding of the question in your introduction. So do not do that. Let's continue. We're still continuing with the introduction. An introduction should be brief. We are still fighting with a number of words. And it doesn't take a lot of words for you to show me that you understand the question. So 4 lines. 4 lines is a good enough paragraph for you to clearly indicate or bring out your introduction, your understanding of the question. Don't go into depth. Don't write. Sometimes you'll find a student wants to write the introduction and then continue putting in information from the topic sentences, from what they would put in the body. Don't overexert yourself in the introduction. Just make sure that you've passed your message clearly. Message is passed, but it's still brief. Then everything else, all these other parts of the information you want to pass will come in very clearly in the body. So it should be brief. Then the other thing we've just talked about, it should contain the name of the text, like I said at the beginning of introduction. Integrate the text in there that you're discussing Samaritan, or from according to the Samaritan, according to Fathers of Nations, so that we understand that you know what text you're using in your reference or in your body or in your discussion of the essay. you can outline at least 2 points. You can outline at least 2 points. This one is not a must because as we are going to see, there are different types of introductions, but you can outline at least 2 points. Not so those are some of the things that you should have in your introduction. If you decide to go with outlining of points, outline at least 2 points. Determination leads to success. If you're using, for example, the current text that Form 4s are using, you can maybe use case of somebody like, I know you've probably read the books Minik or Resian, you can outline the 2 points. But again, it's dependent on what type of introduction you're going to go out and do. So that is writing an introduction. Before I look at types of introduction, any questions?
No.
All right.
No.
Yes. Someone has a question? Yeah, just JP, just stop. Can see JP has raised their hand. Just ask.
I'm okay.
All right. So let's look at types of introductions. Types of introductions. We can have a contextualized introduction. This one will involve using examples from the text. Just a disclaimer before I even talk about these types of discussions. I always say that students should use the introduction they are most comfortable with as long as it passes the message. So I'm not going to tell you that this is a preferable introduction. This is not. Each introduction has its own merits and demerits. However, there are some introductions that I personally feel are better placed, especially in a situation whereby you want to score as much points as possible. Now, the contextualized introduction here is whereby we can now refer to, we are going to the text, we're using the text. We are not going anywhere else, we're using the text. And that's when I was talking about you can use at least 2 options or 2 points from the text. This one is good for that. A contextualized introduction would have you stating things from the text. So for example, if I'm talking about, let's say fathers of nations, and you're talking about greed, you can go straight to the fathers of nations, that it's clear from fathers of nations that greed or leaders are greedy. I'm assuming that the word was not greedy, or the words that used in the question are not greedy. Leaders are greedy or selfish because 1, 2, 3, you're using exact information from the text. That's contextualized. So you have 1 or 2 points from the text and that's it. Remember, you're still keeping it brief. We have the general introduction. Just like the name says, it's general. This one is not pegged on the text. It's general. You can talk about general things. You're talking about greed. You can talk about currently greed in the government, greed in personal greed. You can talk about anything. It's as long as it's general. And remember, at the end of the time or at the end of the paragraph, you will peg in the text you're discussing. If you're talking about technology, a question is about technology, you can talk about it generally. Just something, what do you understand from this question in regards to technology? You can use your knowledge of technology, not necessarily pegging it on the text. But at the end of the day, you will of course mention that this is evident from this story. This is evident from this play. This is evident from this book. So these 2, the first ones that I've started with, I feel are the easiest ones to get or to score points with. I said I'm not going to say that what I would like you to do, but these ones are the easiest for me. Because if you do a general one and you understand the question, it brings it out very clearly. If you do a contextualized one and you've done your outlining of your points very well, you have your topic sentences, again, it's going to come in very well. However, we can still do the others. The paraphrasing one, this one is a combination. I can call it a combination of a contextualized introduction and a general introduction, whereby you're going to maybe start off with a little bit of a general introduction, and then you switch into the text and maybe bring an example or two from the text. Again, that one can also work. Then we have the listing down. I have put them in the order I feel, the order of importance. Let me say that, despite the fact that I'm saying I'm not going to dictate which ones to use. Listing down the points. Of course, you're not going to list. Remember, we are writing in prose, but you can still do a list in the paragraph of the points. Remember, you've written down your points at the topic sentences. You have your points down, so you can list them down. Of course, not as a list. You write them in a paragraph in prose. So discussing the question. Now, I'll discuss very quickly the demerits or the merits and the demerits of each. So, for example, in the contextualized introduction, the advantage of it is that if you have used the text, if you have used parts of the text, it means that you are already assured of at least, like we said, if you have used 2 points, you're assured of 2 topic sentences. They are correct if you have done the correct understanding of the question and interpretation of the question. If you use 2 parts from the text, 2 points, for example, in the contextualized one, you are assured that even in the body, you will score at least 2 points. Even the examiner knows or expects to find at least 2 correct points in your body if you've done the right thing as far as contextualized introduction is concerned. The other advantage is that it keeps you grounded. It's going to keep you in the text. So it's easier to stay focused on the text because you're using the text and nothing else. The disadvantage of this is, again, it's just like the advantage. If you did not interpret the question correctly, and you probably have the wrong points, you will score 0 in the introduction. And therefore, it will also, of course, culminate into your body, because it means you misunderstood the question from the get-go. You have misunderstood the question in your explanation of the introduction, and that's it. So that's the disadvantage of a contextualized introduction. The general introduction is general. It is not pegged on the text, except maybe just mentioning the name of the text. And therefore, the advantage is that even if you probably pick the wrong points in your outlining, but you understood the question correctly, you will still score 2 points in your introduction. Even if the points you had or you have outlined are wrong or are not correct, you still score 2 points if you do the correct introduction, because this one is independent from your points. The disadvantage of this is that sometimes you tend you might get derailed. If I may use that word, you start writing, you get out of topic. You start writing and you find yourself moving out of the topic, essentially exceeding the number of words you're supposed to write, and maybe even rambling on and losing the focus. So you end up not scoring again, or scoring 1 point, because you probably moved away from whatever was expected of you. So it's also easy to ramble on and move out. So those are the disadvantages, or that's the disadvantage of general introduction. Paraphrasing picks the advantages and the disadvantages of these two, because, like I said, it picks, if you did the correct understanding and you paraphrase, you do a good general introduction and a contextualized, you put in a point or 2 points, you score the 2 points. If you missed out on the points, again, probably score 1 point because of the part of the general introduction. If you ramble on in your general introduction and maybe miss the point, again, you score. So it brings out the advantages and the disadvantages of these two that it combines. Then the listing down of the points, the disadvantage is clear. That if you did not get the correct points when outlining, then you score nothing in the introduction. If you did your outlining well and you list down the points, you score again 2 points. So advantages and the disadvantages of this, so that you can pick one and you feel you're comfortable with. Like I've said, I'm not going to dictate, but these two, the first two are, they give you better grounds, or they help you better in better writing your essay and your introduction. So now we've done your introduction, whichever you've decided to go with. Now we get to the body. We've said that the body has 4 paragraphs. We discuss 1 paragraph, that's enough, because each paragraph is basically identical with the other. So all 4 paragraphs are supposed to have or share the same structure. So we'll be discussing what is needed for you to write a paragraph in the body. Now, we did the outlining at the beginning, and we say that that outline will help us later. Now here we are. That outline, whatever we outlined there, the 4 points we discussed, each of those points is what we refer to, each of those points is what we refer to as a topic sentence. And the topic sentence can also be referred to as a situation. In regards to the question that we were answering, what is the situation? What is the topic sentence? That is the topic sentence. And most of the time you have the topic sentence at the beginning of the paragraph, because that is what we will discuss. The topic sentence, that is what the body should contain, the topic sentence, background information, the action, the reaction, and the clincher sentence. So all these parts make up the body, make up the paragraph for you to score 3 points. Remember, we are scoring 3 points, and you need to work. You need to write enough information to score those 3 points. They're not going to come easy. So you find yourself writing a paragraph of 3 lines and expect to score 3 marks. Is not going to happen, because you need to capture all this. And this is not just 2 sentences, 3 sentences. You have to write a good number of words, and the correct, of course, not just writing for the sake of writing. You have to write in this with this in mind. So now let me break it down much better so that we now understand what exactly is required in each. So I was using, this was my, I was using the former, like this one was my analysis of the former class, but I'll give you an essay from, I will use an essay from the Samaritan later. So let's not look at the blossoms. Let's break it down here. How to score maximum points. At the beginning, we said that you have a character. So you have your character. Which character are we talking about? If it's Fathers of Nations, which character are we talking about? You're talking about Karanja Kemani. Identify the character. What is the situation the character is involved in? Remember this now, you're still, you're still asking yourself, when you do the outline, if I take you back, when you do the outline and you have your topic sentence at the beginning there, I told you that once you have 4, 5, maybe 6 lines or 6 topic sentences, you can decide which of these 6 topic sentences do I pick? Which are the 4 topic sentences that I feel I'm comfortable with? So you can use this. You can use this to clear your. So do I have the character involved in this event? Yes. Do I have the situation the character is involved in? That's the topic sentence, so it's already there. Do I have the events that lead to the situation? So you've talked about Karanja Kemani, then maybe you're talking about revenge. Which aspect of revenge? Attacking newborn Walomu. Okay, that's the situation. So what are the events that lead to this situation? Can I get them? So basically, you're quickly going through your mind. Yes, I have the situation. What led to it? All these issues, the backstory, the background. What activities or actions that take place? So you've given us the events that lead to the situation. So maybe his wife leaving him, the death of his daughter, the fact that this person was a junior and now he's earning more than him. All those are events you could discuss. What actions take place? Actions that take place in this situation. So he goes into the office, meets the secretaries, rushes into the office of newborn, insults him, the exchange of words, the physical altercation. Now the activities, and they have to be specific. What is the reaction? Now this one, the reaction here, I always talk about this 5, 6, 7. This one now is the part we talk about the closing of your paragraph. When you talk about the clincher sentence, this is the closing. So your reaction, what are your feelings about this? So these 5, 6, 7 points can be practically merged into one. What is your reaction? From whatever activities or actions that have happened, what do you feel? So he rushes into the office and starts fighting and gets arrested. What do you feel? This one can be now, it's you. You who is writing, for example, what is your feeling? Or what are other characters in the text feeling about that person's actions? It can be either. Then, of course, mentioning of the virtue or the vice. So whatever it is you're talking about, and this one will be in relation to the outcome, the clincher. So at the end of the day, because of these actions the person did, because of what they did here, what is the outcome? Because of seeking revenge, they end up suffering, they end up experiencing pain. So for example, in this case, you can talk about Karanja Kimani loses his position as professor or gets arrested and gets jailed for 6 months because of seeking revenge. He also loses his position. So this is remember what we said, that every action has a reaction. So at the end of the day, what is happening? Was it a virtue? Then you mention the reward. Was it a vice? Then you mention the punishment. And that is how your paragraph should be basically broken down. Now, this breakdown of the essay or a paragraph is what I'm talking about, that you need to use a lot of information, and it's supposed to be specific information. Supposed to be specific information. Do not guess. So if you're talking about a character, you must give the correct name of that character. If you're talking about the details, like for example, when Karanja Kimani goes into newborn Walomu's office, you must mention the actual details. That he throws a punch, misses, throws a second one, misses, the third one, they fall to the ground, and then they're separated by police officers, by security guards, or whoever. And that's it. It must be specific. You don't just say they fight. You don't just go straight and say they fight or there's an insult. You can even use the specific insult, because that's where the points come in. So let me, before I go to the other part, let me look for an example from a text you're going to do. I have an example from the Samaritan. Let me look for that. So that you can see the breakdown using whatever we've just discussed.
Mwalimu, we can take roll call in the meantime. This is on
Okay, sure.
Yeah, go ahead. So boys, look at your screen. You should see some message. Pick your class, submit. Out of 196, I think about 161 have done it. We still have some who have not. So this roll call is also shared with your parents on attendance. So you expect your parents to, if you provided your data, a device or a gadget, be sure also show attendance. You did attend the class.
Can you resend the roll call?
What if I can't?
Who is having an issue? If you have an
Can't
issue,
be.
text me directly. Yeah, just text me directly to my. Are you able to text me? Just do a message. Go to the chat section and then share with me. We still have around another 20 students who have not, or 19 students. We are stopping now. 18 to go. $17 to go. And this brings to an end now. We stop it. Thank you so much. Malumi, you may continue.
All right. So I hope you can see then I've started a new screen share. You can see it.
Yes.
So that's I'm using the Samaritan, which is one of the texts you will be using. So let's break it down using that model that I gave. So the introduction, for example, in this case, I decided to go with a contextualized introduction. So the question, promotion of science and technology, promotion of science and technology fair in schools can help curb social evils. Justify this statement with illustrations from the Samaritan by John Lara. So here's the introduction. The Samaritan is an app that helps root out corruption, bad leadership, and other vices in Maracas municipality. It is the winning innovation in that year's national innovation competition by Sagrada Secondary School students, Alvita and Montano. Now, first and foremost, let me break it down. We talked about understanding the question. So if I look at this question here, which are the most important words? Promotion of science and technology, that statement. Promotion of science and technology fair in schools. This part is very important. The promotion of science and technology fair in schools. And then we're talking about curbing of social evils. This other part is very important. Like you said, there is two parts. So in my introduction, I'll have to mention this part and this part. So I'm talking about the Samaritan is an app that helps root out corruption. So I've talked about social evils in my question here. I'm talking about an app, which is technology. Then I continue, root out corruption, bad leadership, and other vices in Maracas municipality. Now I need to talk about how is it that promotion of science and technology fair in schools? How is it am I going to integrate it in my introduction? This is the winning innovation in that year's national innovation competition by Sagrada Secondary School. So I've brought in that aspect, that promotion of science technology in schools can help curb social evils. I have brought out this question in my introduction. So it's an innovation by these two students, that's Alvita and Montano. Now, we're saying that we have our topical sentence, our topic sentence, which is the situation. The situation must answer the question. Promotion of science and technology fair in schools can help curb social evils. So, which is the situation? So I use this one. The Samaritan helps in highlighting evils against the environment. The Samaritan helps in highlighting evils against the environment. That's the situation. In my case here, I don't necessarily have to have a character. Remember, we are talking about science and technology. So it's not necessary that I have to put in a character, but the situation is there. So you have the situation. Can we get some background information on this situation? So when Alvita and Montano want to find out if the Samaritan is working, they put it on a test run to protect the environment. That's the background information. And I'm picking it from the text. So when they first launched it, they wanted to do a test run to find out if it actually works. So they put it to a test to see if it can protect the environment. What are the actions or activities that now happen or that take place to bring this out? So people take photographs and videos of illegal activities that degrade the environment in their neighborhoods and provide the details of the location where the activities are taking place and the people involved. So what are the activities that are now leading us to this part, that the Samaritan is helping in highlighting evils against the environment? I'm also picking this again from the text. The reaction, this one, like I said, it can be from the text, from people in the text, or from you. So for example, in this case, I was saying that the Samaritan gives people an avenue to air their concerns directly to their leaders. That is my feeling. This is my own contribution, my own feeling about it. Virtues or vices. The Samaritan helps citizens work as watchdogs and keep the officials responsible abreast with what is happening. So what is the outcome of this? Because now we're talking about either a virtue or a vice. So in this case, this is a virtue, something good. What is the outcome of this virtue? What is the outcome? This now leads us to the end of our paragraph or our clincher sentence. The information is posted on the pigeonhole of the municipal department responsible for the environment, and the department only needs to log into the app and check their pigeonhole to see what reports people are sending to them. So essentially, basically what you're saying is at the end of the day, that this one, the outcome can also be different. This one can also be something, you can also write something like, it also enables the leaders to know what is happening in the respective places of work, etc., etc. The outcome will be dependent on all this. So I'm not saying that this is exactly, it's the only thing we can write, but it is pegged on what we are writing here on the question. So that is me breaking it down, but then I can read the whole paragraph as it would be written. The Samaritan helps in highlighting evils against the environment. When Alvita and Montano want to find out if the Samaritan is working, they put it on a test run to protect the environment. People take photographs and videos of illegal activities that degrade the environment in their neighborhoods and provide the details of the location where the activities are taking place and the people involved. The Samaritan, therefore, gives people an avenue to air their concerns directly to their leaders. It helps citizens work as watchdogs and keep the officials responsible abreast with what is happening. The information is posted on the pigeonholes of the municipal department responsible for the environment, and the department only needs to log into the app and check their pigeonhole to see what reports people are sending them. So this is what I'm talking about as please ensure you mute your audio. So that's what I'm saying. This is now a breakdown using a text that we are all going to be looking at. So that you break it down in this way. This is just a general breakdown. You can do it in different ways. And as you can see, you only need to know that you've captured the topic sentence, You've captured the illustrations and the activities regarding the topic sentence in detail. And then you have the third part here that can now fall under what we refer to as the clincher sentence, the outcome. What is the result of all this? Because remember, at the end of the day, by the end of the paragraph, we should capture the two sides of the question. So our question here, as I can repeat the question, promotion of science and technology fair in schools can help curb social evils. Justify this statement with illustrations from the Samaritan. So by the end of my paragraph here, I have captured essentially the two parts of the question, that there is promotion of science fair. And as we have discussed in the introduction, we understand that the Samaritan is an app that was developed by students. And then I continue and talking about how now that app has helped to curb social evils. So people are able to post about whatever evils are happening against the environment and keep the officials responsible abreast with what's happening. So curbing of social evils, it's clear, or the two parts of the question have been brought out by my analysis in the paragraph. So that is how we break down a paragraph in the body. Now, there is a question whether you need to put in the clincher sentence. And I'll respond by saying that the clincher sentence is the outcome. It's important. And let me continue sharing with the other part. Just to highlight, let me just take you back to where we were so that I can maybe break it down or simplify it. I like to usually break this down or to simplify this, and I put it into this, that this first part, now 1 and 2, will qualify or fall under the topic sentence. 3, 4 will fall under the illustrations, the evidence. This is not a specific science, but if you do the first one correctly, you get a mark. If you do the second part correctly, you get a mark. The last part, which involves the clincher sentence and the outcome, etc., is important in that if you capture these 5, 6, 7 points, if you capture them again, you get another mark. So it ends up into the 3 marks that we are talking about per paragraph. So if you miss out on your clincher, however well you have done your illustrations, you might not score the maximum 3 points. If you don't illustrate well, you might miss out on another point. So it's important to go step by step. That's why I've broken it down this way. And then I'm simplifying it back by saying, I'm simplifying it back by saying that the first 2 capture the topic sentence, 1 point. 3 and 4, the evidence, the illustrations, everything that you need to talk about the situation will give you another point. And then the last 3, which capture the ending, the outcome of the center of the part of whatever you're discussing, capture the last point. So each of these aspects is important. I'm not saying you necessarily have to put all this in, but you need to capture these essential areas. That you have a topic sentence, you have illustrations and evidence of what you're talking about, and then you have a clincher sentence, you have an outcome. What is the end result? What happens because of the situation you've just discussed, because of these situations you discussed? Someone is asking about the essay being 1 paragraph. It's not 1 paragraph, it's 4 paragraphs of the body. Like I said, 2 paragraphs, that is 1 introduction, 1 conclusion, totaling up to 6 paragraphs. The only reason why I'm discussing 1 paragraph is because each paragraph is a mirror of the other. So I'm just using 1 paragraph because all of the other 4 paragraphs, they will still use the same format. You'll need to have a topic sentence, you need to have illustrations, you need to have an outcome. but essentially the paragraphs in an essay are 6, 4 in the body, 1 introduction, 1 conclusion. Now, before I move on, before I move into the conclusion, any questions? Any questions?
In the introduction, why didn't we see the title of the book?
My introduction didn't have the title of the book.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't mention the title of the book. Sure, I didn't mention the title of the book, but because of the kind of text I am using, the Samaritan, or whatever words I've used, because of my contextualized introduction, it is almost clear. But again, you can still go ahead and use it. It would still look, it will still be okay. So for example, this is evident in the book, The Samaritan, or the play, The Samaritan. You can add it there. That's also right. But because of the kind of text I have used, the fact that I have contextualized the information, it is, it might seem redundant. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yes, because I've used the characters and the book and the name of the book in my introduction. I can still go ahead and say this is evident or this is clear from the play The Samaritan, but it will still be redundant because whatever I have used is from the text. Okay?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Any other question?
Sir,
Mhm.
I really don't get how you bring out the reaction in the paragraph.
Mhm. How you bring out
So
the
how-
reaction?
how can you best bring it out?
The reaction is, like I said, the reaction is from you or from other characters. Okay? So there are
Yeah.
actions that happen. If I go back to the screen, let me share. So there are actions that happen. We always talk about action and reaction. So people take photographs and videos of illegal activities that degrade the environment in their neighborhoods. These are the actions or the activities that happen. What is the reaction to this? So this one can be you. What do you feel about it? Or something from the text. So in this case, I just used my own perspective, my own view, that now probably because of this app allowing people to take photographs of illegal activities, etc., then they are able, the people are able now to air their concerns directly to their leaders. Something probably, as we've seen in the text, the Samaritan they were not able to do before that. So this is my own reaction. So your reaction is basically what you feel from what the actions are talking about, or what other people in the text might feel because of the actions that you've discussed here.
Yeah.
Am I making any sense?
Yes, it is.
Yep.
Yes.
So all you need to do, remember, these 3 parts, that's the reaction, the virtue, vices, and the outcome. These 3 parts can be interrelated. They can be interlinked. Don't go out there looking for, I have to write a reaction. I have to write a virtue or a vice. Go there looking for writing an outcome, a result that comes from this situation and the activities that happen. That's why I'm trying to simplify it by saying topical sentence, 1 point. Background and activities together will give you a point. And then these 3 will give you another point. So don't go out there that if I don't have a reaction, I'm not scoring a point. If I don't have a virtue or a vice, I'm not scoring a point. If you can bring out your outcome, what is the end result? What happens at the end? Then you're on your way to scoring, because all this end up bringing out the clincher, the closer of the paragraph, the summary. So it's all in the aspects of understanding the question. And the more you do it, the more you write it down, the better it becomes, or the easier it becomes for you. So the more we write these essays, the easier it's going to become, so that you find that these outcomes can be infused seamlessly into the rest of the paragraph without having to go into thinking about, did I put in a reaction? Did I talk about this? But I was breaking this down to help you with the details, where to put in the details and the necessary details. Any other question? So before I finish up, the last part is a conclusion. Unfortunately, I am missing the slide that has the conclusion. I'll be looking for it over the course of, I'll look for it as we discuss oral skills. Hopefully I can find it. I think I did not add it to my slide here. It's unfortunate. But we'll discuss very quickly this. I'll give you the conclusion, then I'll look for it and maybe I can share it before the end of the lesson. Conclusion, again, it's supposed to be brief, should be brief. And it's the easiest part of this essay, if I may say that, at the risk of making it sound easy. It's the easiest part because you are concluding something you've already discussed. So you don't need to go and start writing new topics. Remember what we said at the beginning. If you have outlined your topical sentences, you have 4. You are sure that these are the topic sentences I will discuss. It's very easy now for you to go right ahead and write your summary. But if you didn't do a good plan, by the time you get to the 4th paragraph, you realize, wait, I had a better point that has just come to my mind right now. But now, because I still have an extra paragraph that I need to put in, why don't I put it in the conclusion? You do not do that. So your conclusion is just basically summing up what you've discussed. So for example, what you need to do is simply sum up your discussion. Simply sum up your discussion. You can use words like in conclusion, in brief, to sum up. That's it. In conclusion, or to sum up, it's clear that the use or the introduction of science fairs in schools can help or has helped eradicate or control or curb crimes in Maracas municipality. From the above examples, it's clear. So it's just that simple as, because you're only using whatever you've written down. Of course, again, the conclusion, just like the introduction, I'm going to say here, like, I'm going to say the obvious or state the obvious. It must come in the last paragraph. If it's not in the last paragraph, it's not a conclusion. So you will not score the points for conclusion if it's not the last paragraph. Then again, please avoid introducing new points in your conclusion. Like I've said, you went very quickly in there, you've written your 4 paragraphs, and then you realize, I have a better point. And you want to introduce that better point in your 5th paragraph or your 6th paragraph this time. That is the conclusion. It will not score any point if it's the conclusion. Or if you score points for that, you will not score points for conclusion. So again, planning. Then do not give moral lessons in your introduction, in your conclusion. Don't give moral lessons. We should not be corrupt. No, don't give moral lessons. We should be not just go straight and summarize. It's simply 2 lines, 3 lines, you're done. So it's as easy as that. Don't overdo it, especially in the conclusion, because you're just summarizing something you've discussed at length. So just summing it up, showing us that you understand what a conclusion is supposed to entail. So any question?
Sure.
Yeah.
What's the maximum number of words that one is required to use when the
Sorry?
maximum number of words one is marks are required to use when writing an essay?
Yeah, that is the last part I wanted to talk about. So your essay should not exceed 450 words. 450 words, if I remember correctly, this one is tantamount to confirmation. If you're using the normal foolscaps, I think have around 32 lines. If you're using the normal foolscaps, it's about 2 pages. 2 pages, I think, give or take. If you're using the KCSE foolscaps, which have 22, it's approximately 3. But that's tantamount confirmation. That's not. That's basically. I'll find out more, and maybe we can discuss that. Even you can seek for confirmation and clarification from your class teachers. But that's it. You can count. And some of you might ask, how is it possible that they will know how many words I've used? They can. There's that allocation of the pages they expect you to use. But generally, they say it's 450 words. So if you do exceed to 450 marks, you lose 2 marks. Is it a must you name the writer? No, it's not a must you name the writer. But the writer is always there. When the question is given, they'll always put in the writer. So if you put in the writer, you don't have to worry about whether you're giving the correct writer. If you do put down the name of the writer, it's on the question. When one is told to stop narrating, that means that you are not giving the illustrations. You're basically telling a story. For example, if we're talking about, let's say, the question of revenge brings pain and suffering in Fathers of Nations, and you're discussing the case of Karanja Kimani, and you start by discussing about how Karanja Kimani came from or his studies in the universities abroad and all that. That has nothing to do with revenge. You're basically just telling us a story about Fathers of Nations. You're narrating the story. So just give us the illustrations that lead us to the situation. So you're narrating by telling us irrelevant information. And that can end up in getting you penalized, not necessarily because you're not going to find. You might narrate and at the end of the day capture the essential background information. But remember, in that aspect of narrating, you have used a lot of words that probably will lead you to exceeding the number of words you need. So narrating means that you are talking about things that are not relevant to the situation. Can we use 2 illustrations in 2 different paragraphs, but all of them are involving the same character? Yes, you can. You can use the same evidence for 2 situations. The topic sentences are different, but the situations are the same. Yeah, it's okay. It's true. It can happen. You can find it happens that the background information for this topic sentence is the same background information for the second topic sentence. No problem. The only thing is that the topic sentences are different. Well and good. How many paragraphs in a body? We have 6 paragraphs total for the essay, 4 paragraphs for the body. No, you do not underline the title. When you are writing the title of the book, you don't underline it. How long should one paragraph be? Yeah, there's no specific length of how long a paragraph should be. It's as long as the information you need to capture. Of course, without trying as much as possible not to exceed. But remember, don't go there thinking that, oh, I will exceed the number of words. I'm going to limit my words. No. Write as much information as you can without narrating. Because if you write a good composition, a good essay, you have well-supported evidence and all that. And you score 3 marks in each paragraph. That is 12 marks. If you do a good introduction and a good conclusion, that's a 16 without having added the language marks. Even if they give you 3 marks for language, for example, that's 19. And they deduct 2 marks from you. You 17, you still score a good grade, you still score a very good grade. So don't worry about exceeding the number of words if you have information that is relevant. Because imagine that you write shallow paragraphs and score 1 mark, 1 mark, 1 mark each, which we refer to as theme. So at the end of the day, you have 4 marks from the paragraph. You have maybe 4 points from the introduction and the conclusion. That's 8 marks. and then maybe 1 mark from the language. That is 9 marks. But you did not get deducted 2 marks, but you have 9. Another person who did all that with all the details scored 17 despite getting a deduction of 2 marks. So do not worry about the deduction of the 2 marks as long as you're writing the relevant information and you're putting in the details. Because at the end of the day, if you write a good essay, even if they deduct 2 points, you will still have a good point, or you'd have scored a good mark at the top. Tense, yes, good question, because that's another thing I wanted to talk about. You should always we use the present. When we're using, we're talking about the tense, we use the simple present tense. We use a simple present tense in the text, in the essay. She talks, she buys, they send, etc. and so forth. Simple present tense. Then kindly clarify. Please outline the format of the clincher and topic sentences with examples. Format of clincher and topic sentences. I've given that essay that I've given. There's a topic sentence. For example, if I may read my topic sentence, I talked about, we were talking about the question. Just a minute. The Samaritan helps in highlighting evils against the environment. That's the topic sentence. The clincher sentence is basically discussing the outcome. I'll give more examples, maybe over the course, because I think I have another one for most. Unfortunately, we're not doing, I'd only done the Samaritan and Artist of the Floating World. I know we have not done the Samaritan in depth for us to understand some of these things. But I will look for more examples, and maybe we can even discuss them over the course of the term in school. Just to confirm, can the 2 outline points used in the introduction be used in the body? Yes, use them. That's what I said. That once the examiner sees the 2 outline points, they are sure that you're going to have 2 points from the body, because those 2 points will definitely be 2 topic sentences. And one, okay, is it, I'm asked to name the right, I think. I think I've answered most of these questions. When writing a conclusion, is there a problem when you repeat the word in topic sentence? Topic sentence or the question? Do not, when writing your conclusion, don't repeat the words in the question. Just conclude. In summary, it's clear to see that you're just summarizing. So, okay, sometimes in the question, the words in the questions, try as much as possible not to repeat them, because what happens if this is allowed, sometimes you might find the question is saying determination leads to success. So you can just say, in summary, it's clear from the above examples that determination leads to success. Basically, you've not summarized. You've just repeated again the question. So try as much as possible to avoid repeating the words from the question, even in the conclusion. Can you write more than 4 paragraphs in the body? Yes, you can write more than 4 paragraphs in the body, like I said, but you'll only get 4 marks. You'll only get marked, only 4 paragraphs will get marked. So if you write 5 paragraphs, they'll mark the 5 paragraphs as far as my memory serves, but they'll only give you the point for the 4 best paragraphs. But remember, at the end of the day, there's the word count. So you do 5 paragraphs, they mark for 4, and they'll still deduct 2 marks. Because if you're writing 5 paragraphs, remember, even for those people who write 6 paragraphs, period, there's a tendency of exceeding word limit. So you're writing 7 paragraphs, expect to exceed the word limit at whatever cost. So that's the penalty. So why do you need to write 5 paragraphs and they're only going to mark 4? Do your outline correctly, prepare your work well, so that you have 4 paragraphs that you're very comfortable with. You don't need to exceed the 5th paragraph. This usually happens if you didn't do a good plan. Are the reaction and the vices the same thing? The reaction is for the actions, from the actions that have happened, the activities. So you're discussing the background and the activities. What actions have led us to the situation? The situation is a topic sentence. So then what is your reaction to those actions? What is the reaction of other people to those actions? The vices, the virtues are exactly what is this that's being discussed. So the virtues, vices are what lead us to the outcome. That determination is what you're discussing. So anytime someone is intent on doing 1, 2, 3, they achieve success. So the virtues or the vices are not the same as the reactions. Reactions are in response to whatever actions are happening in the situation, the topic sentence. Why do teachers sometimes say 2 long paragraphs, i.e. introduction and conclusion? Same thing I'm saying, that it's supposed to be brief from the introduction. The conclusion is supposed to be brief. If you keep making your introduction too long, probably it means that you're over exceeding the number of words. You're also probably misusing an introduction. So just keep it brief. So when they're saying it's that too long introduction, you're probably definitely over introducing, you're over exerting yourself in your introduction. Remember, it's supposed to be brief. Yes, an example of a conclusion. I am going to look for the conclusion. I think I have a conclusion, though I do not have, I haven't seen the breakdown, but I have a conclusion. I'll show you before we close this session. Are you supposed to incorporate figures of speech? I did not understand this question. Figures of speech, incorporate them where? If you're writing your essay, okay, fine. If you're talking about figures of speech in the essay, maybe use of irony and all those things. This is what I'm assuming you mean. We do not mark on language, the flowery language in essays. So if you using some fancy words and language in there, there is no extra mark you're going to get. I think I'm trying to think that's what the question is supposed to say. Is it a must to use different characters per paragraph in the body? No, it's not a must. Like I said at the beginning, you can have one character and that character serves the 4 points. You can have 2 characters, each sharing 2 points. You can have 4 different characters. So it's dependent on the question and what it requires from you. So it's not necessary that there are 4 characters specifically. Is it a must? One uses different characters per paragraph in the body. Yeah, that I've answered. Yeah, basically use synonyms for the key terms in the questions. Yeah. Now, before I move on to oral skills, because I think I have very little time to discuss that, just let me share the conclusion. An example of a conclusion from the one I had written. So the conclusion. In conclusion, it's clear from the examples above that encouraging innovation competitions in our schools can help control social degradation. So that's just a conclusion. Encouraging says, I didn't, instead of saying science fair, basically, but it's clear that from this conclusion ends up discussing what I've talked about. So in conclusion, in summary, in brief, it's clear that from the examples above, encouraging innovations and innovation competitions in schools can help control social degradation. So that is an example of a conclusion, very brief, but it captures the essence of what you're supposed to talk about. So any other questions about this? Of course, we'll keep on interacting. We'll do this more. And once we have more examples, we've written more, we'll probably get to understand what is required, what we need to correct, what we need to change. So now I want us to look at oral skills, which was another area of concern. Is there a title? We don't write a title. No one is going to ask you to write a title. There is no title, no need. So oral skills. I have I don't have a screen sharing for oral skills, but we'll do it by ear.
Anasikika.
I don't have a screen share for oral skills, so I will do it by I'll just give it as it comes. So oral skills. Paper 1, question 3, oral skills, worth 30 marks. Now, oral skills, we can divide it into generally 5 areas, but we will find some more. Can divide it into 5 areas, but I will discuss 5 areas, but you can even go more with more. I think there is an extra one or 2. The first one, we are going to discuss is oral poems or oral narratives. So oral skills, the first question you're going to find is either going to be an oral poem or oral skills. Yes, sorry, not oral skills, but oral narrative. Sorry, it's either an oral poem or an oral narrative. So they'll either have one of the two, a poem or a narrative. Now, in this case, the kind of questions you should definitely expect, depending on what they set, will include or will be about something like rhyme. If it's an oral poem, they'll ask you about rhyming words. Identify the rhyming words, pairs of rhyming words. If you get that question, be very careful about it, how you write the rhyming words. You find you've been told to give 6 pairs and you're only giving 2 pairs. Just because they have given you 3 marks and they have told you 6 pairs, you just give 3 words. Remember that some questions like they just basically tricking you around. 3 marks and you've been told to give 3 pairs. So you give 3 words. I have seen it happen. So be very careful about it. How you write the words, again, the rhyming words. You need to show that they rhyme. You can write them one above the other. So faith, late, faith and late, one above the other to show that they are actually rhyming, to show the rhyme. So that's how you present them. Again, another question you get is describing the rhyme scheme. Those are questions you likely find. What's the rhyme scheme? The rhyme scheme is usually regular or irregular. The only way to differentiate or know whether it's regular or irregular, I always say, is the predictability. Is it predictable? Can we predict if we have 3 stanzas, for example, and we are told to fix the 4th stanza? Would it be possible for us to predict what the 4th stanza's rhyme scheme would be? If so, then it's a regular pattern. If not so, then it's irregular. So that's it. Because the rhyme scheme will change. It does not necessarily have to be A, B, 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 C, 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 C to be regular. But there can be an aspect of regularity that will tell us that if we went to another stanza, for example, it's easy for us to predict what the rhyme scheme would be. So it's either regular or irregular. And you must write both. You must write the rhyme scheme, that is A, B, B, C, C, and then regular, irregular to score points when you asked about the rhyme scheme. Another area that we'll ask about in oral skills is the sound features. Sound features, alliteration, assonance, consonance. rhyme itself is a sound pattern. They will ask about that. They might ask the question about which sound features have been used. Sometimes they'll ask that question in that way. Another times they'll ask the question of how has rhythm been achieved? It is still the same. Rhythm is achieved through the use of those sound patterns. So if they bring it up, or if it's the question is set up in the how is rhythm achieved or sound features, then either of those will definitely be referring to sound features, because like we say in poetry in paper 1, most of the time it is more concerned about the performance, about how to perform. So that's why we find ourselves dealing more with sound pattern, rhythm, how do you say line A, and so on and so forth. It's different from poetry in paper 2, which we can discuss at a later date, which is more concentrated on or more concerned with the subject matter, more concerned with the content. Another question that you're likely to find, and this one is almost always there in oral, in the first part of oral skills, that is either when it's either a poem or a narrative, is how do you say or perform a certain line? Now, with this one, we are looking for verbal cues and non-verbal cues. And I'm going to be very categorical here and say that you need to be specific. What do I mean by specific? If you're talking about a verbal cue, you're talking about intonation, for example, be specific. That I would use a falling intonation at the end of the sentence because of 1, 2, 3. I would use a rising intonation at this point in this sentence. That is, I would use a rising intonation because it's a question, or to ask the question, or to show, be specific exactly why you're using that cue. Don't just go and say falling intonation or rising intonation. What I've come to realize with students is that verbal cues are usually not a big problem. Most students will score with verbal cues. I have had very few problems for those students I've looked at who have problems with verbal cues. There are very few. So that's something I can clearly say. However, the problem comes in with the non-verbal cues. And remember, for you to score a question, to score anything in this question that is asking you about how do you say, how do you perform this line, you have to put in a verbal cue and a non-verbal cue. The two must go hand in hand. Just because it's 2 marks, you don't put in 2 verbal cues. You'll only score 1 mark. You don't put in 2 non-verbal cues. Again, you score 1 mark. So it's 1 verbal cue, 1 non-verbal cue. Now, non-verbal cues, that's where the problem comes in. Because when we talk about non-verbal cues, we talk about gestures, we talk about body movement, we might talk about facial expressions, and so on and so forth. But you need to be specific. You don't say, I would use a gesture, or I would use body movement, or I would use a facial expression. You need to be specific. Makes it easier for you. So, for example, I would smile while saying the word happy. That's specific, that the person is talking about a facial expression. You don't even need to tell me that you would use a facial expression. You say, I would smile while saying the word happy. That is a facial expression. I know it. I would raise both my hands up while saying the words in the line to show prayer or to show supplication. You have clearly told me the non-verbal cue you'd use, specific. So you should just be very specific in the non-verbal cues. And that's where the problem comes in, that most students are not specific. They'll just go ahead and say, use gestures, use facial expressions. No. Be specific. Exactly what is it that you're going to use? What is it you're going to do? I would touch my head to show the crown. I would raise all those things, specifics. Then another question you're likely to find in this first section is words to stress in a line. Which words would you stress in line A, in line 3, in line 5? In this case, you always say that you always look for what words we refer to as the content words. And most of the time, we put more emphasis on verbs and nouns as content words. then you ask or you answer the reason or as to the reason why you're stressing those words. So if you have a sentence that has 4, let's say 6 words, and of those 6 words, 4 of them are either nouns or verbs, all 4 of them will be stressed. Sometimes you find students who just pick one word. So if there's a noun, a verb, we usually put more emphasis on that. To an extent, we also we might put emphasis on adjectives if they're there, but emphasis is always on nouns and verbs as the content words. And then you now tell us, why is it that you're stressing these words? Because they express the degree of this, because they're bringing out the pain. Exactly. You have to be, again, specific. On top of saying that they are the content words, you need to go ahead and be specific on exactly what are these, why are these words being stressed. Another word that can be, or another question that you can find in this section is, what features make this item easy to remember, easy to recite? Which features make it easy to remember, easy to recite? Again, the issues, this one I will include things like repetition, for example, use of short lines. Basically, the structure of oral poetry is different from the structure of the other poem you're talking about in paper 2. So what is it about this structure, about this poem, that makes it easy to remember, easy to recite? It could also include the sound devices that have been used. They can also help. So it could be aspects of repetition, short lines, maybe use of rhyme. It's also something that would help with recitation or with memory or remembering. Another question, this one could be used either for poetry or for the narrative. All those questions I've asked will most likely be revolving around the narrative, the poem. For the narrative, you can find a question like, how would you capture the audience's attention, the attention of the audience before the narrative? You can find that question. How would you capture the attention of the audience before the narrative? So what things would you do? Remember now, again, very important. If you find a question like this, most likely the question is phrased or framed in the way, in this way. How would you capture the attention of the audience? For you to score a full mark, you need to personalize your answer. You need to answer the question as yourself. So I will score you points. But just saying, for example, how would you capture the attention of the audience? I would clap my hands. That's an example. But if you say clap hands or clap my hands, you don't get anything, because you need to personalize that answer depending on how the question has been framed. So capturing the attention of the audience, how would you do it? Again, you know how to do it. So if it's a story, you can start with a riddle, you can start with a song, etc., etc. How to know if your audience are attentive or losing attention? That's another question you can find, either for the poem or for the narrative. This one can also be used elsewhere. You might not find it in the poem or the narrative, you might find it elsewhere. You're giving a speech, you're giving a talk. How do you know that the audience is attentive or not attentive? Again, personalize your answer. How do you know they are not attentive? So if you're answering the question, you would say that the audience is not, I would know that the audience is not attentive because they are not 1, 2, 3, and 4. Make the answers as comprehensive as possible, and basically trying to make it a full sentence so that you're answering the question as it has been asked. How do you make the story interesting? This is for the narrative part. Again, how do you make it interesting? Those are questions you'll likely find. So how do you make it interesting? Mimicry, again, some of the devices you would use. You can also talk about use of gestures, and then explain exactly specifically where you would use those gestures or body movement. Costumes. This one is an open question. These are usually open questions. So this first part, if you do if you have these questions, those are the likely questions you're going to find. The likely questions you will find in the first part of oral skills. That is when you have either an oral narrative or an oral poem. This constitutes between 6 to 12 marks. It depends with how they do it. Now, I think I'm running out of time, but we have a few minutes. We have about 8 minutes. So I'll go through the other parts you expect to find. The other parts we talk about will include pronunciation, intonation, silent letters, sounds. Now, the tips for this will be, for example, in the pronunciation of words. If you're told, if it's the pronunciation usually depends, especially with what type of word it is. The different pronunciation we've done, pronunciation for nouns, there are different pronunciation for verbs. There's different stress is usually placed different places for a noun and different places for a verb, especially for those that share the same structure. There's usually that. So you need to know which word are we talking about. The intonation. This one is a little bit, it's one of the areas whereby you need to be very careful. When you talk about intonation, you do not use arrows. You talk about falling or rising intonation. That's what we do. And we know the structure of falling and rising intonation. You don't need to go over it. So if you're talking about the falling intonation, don't use an arrow. Write in full, falling intonation. What intonation is in this sentence? Are you going home? That's a question that is expected. I am expecting to give a yes or no answer. So rising intonation, not just say rising. Don't just say falling. Make it complete. Rising intonation. What is your name? Falling intonation. So make sure it's full when you're writing that. Falling intonation, rising intonation. Silent letters and sounds. This one, if you're ever asked to underline the silent letter, please do the underlining. Do not pick it out. Underline the silent letters. Just underline the silent letter. Because sometimes you find a word that has two letters. One of them is two similar letters, for example. Let's say, for example, we have, off the top of my head, I can't get the word, but we have two letters, for example. For example, a word like government. Government has two N's. One of the N's in government is silent. The other one is not. And then you pick out and write N. Which N are we talking about in this case? So when you're told to underline silent letters, just underline, because there is a likelihood there could be two sounds or two letters in there that are similar, but one of them is silent, the other one is not. So you pick out N, for example, in government, and you write it N on the side. Then the examiner will be like, which N? There are two N's here. You've picked out one. But if you underline the correct one, easy as that. So that's it as far as as silent letters are concerned. Underline. If it is silent letters and sounds, underline. If it is SH that is silent, underline SH. Don't just underline S. Because again, then you are underlining the wrong sound, because SH and S are different. So underline the sound, underline the letters that make up the sound. Underline the letters that are silent. If there are two letters that are silent, underline them. Something to note is that some letters are used in conjunction with others to bring out a sound. It does not mean they are silent. In a word like rapport, for example, we have the use of O and R. On the basis of it, some of you might say that R is silent. is not silent. It has just been integrated into the sound that brings out the O sound. But rapport, the T at the end, is silent. We eliminate it or we remove it, the pronunciation of that word does not change. But if we remove the combination of, for example, R and O, we might have a different pronunciation of that word. So words that have been integrated, letters that have been integrated into a vowel sound, especially when we bring in some, we have a consonant and a vowel that are bringing out a vowel sound. Most of the time they're used to bring out that vowel sound. They are not silent. They're just emphasizing or enhancing the pronunciation of that vowel sound. So be very careful about that, because you find students will do that. Or you find the combination, or that there are two, a word like cheese, for example, which has two E's. You assume that one of those E's is silent. So you underline that. For example, I'm not saying there's a silent letter in cheese. I'm just giving an example. You underline one E. No. The combination of those two E sounds is what's bringing out the actual sound of the word. So none of them is silent because they are just a combination. Some of these, the ones we refer to as diphthongs. Now, the other part that I've not discussed here that is very likely to come in oral skills is what I may refer to as listening skills, negotiation skills, basically conversation skills, and the interview aspect. How do you prepare for an interview? How do you prepare for a speech? How do you prepare for a certain event? So if, for example, it's a case of an interview, be very careful about the question and how it's been asked. You are supposed to attend an interview at a certain place. How would you prepare? That question is very different from how will you present yourself on the day of the interview. So how do you prepare for an interview? What things will you do? These are things you do before the interview. So if you're talking about preparing, you cannot say, I will groom myself appropriately. You are preparing. You've not gone for the interview. But you can talk about, I would prepare the clothes, or I will set aside the clothes to wear on the day. So be very careful about how you answer this question. Again, these questions need you to personalize the answers. How would you prepare for an interview? Bring it out. I would research on the company. I would have a friend ask me questions that are likely to be asked. I would prepare an appropriate attire for the day. I would make a recon visit to the site or to the office or to the company so that I don't get lost on the day. Those are some of the points you'd use. So again, personalize. I'm going through this. It's basically doing it in a crash course program of sorts so that I do not interfere with the next lesson. The other one is about listening skills, etiquette. You need to identify aspects of etiquette. You can be given a conversation and then you're told to identify what factors, or how is it that character A did not observe the laws or the rules of etiquette? Or how can we see the observance of etiquette in the above conversation? So you need to know that what are some of the things that make up etiquette. Thank you, please, welcome, pardon me, those kinds of the terms or words that bring out aspects of etiquette. When you are answering these questions, avoid as much as possible in using negative words. So for example, if you've been told, what is it that this person did not do? Or how is it that we can say Mary did not observe etiquette? She did not say thank you. Avoid that. So you can say, maybe Mary could have said thank you when she was given the book. Or Mary failed to say thank you when she was given the book. So avoid using the she did not, we did not, and so on and so forth. The other part of the conversation or another conversation you can get is where you are supposed to fill in. You have a conversation, one part is there given, then the other part is supposed to be filled in. Again, you need to observe the laws and rules of etiquette. So when you are answering the questions, or when you are responding to the questions, again, observe etiquette. And this one is guided by the line at the top and the line below. So you answer the question. If there's a question asked at the beginning, you will answer that in your answer. And also ensure you read the line below to find out if there is a question or there's a statement that is being or that's being answered, meaning that you had to have asked that question. So those are the aspects you look at when you're answering or you're looking at conversations. So that there's that conversation where you're filling in. And for you to score the 2 points, 1, you must observe the laws of etiquette. And 2, you must be guided by the parts at the top and the parts at the bottom. So good morning, sir. How are you doing? So you know your response will be, good morning, I am fine. Then down here, maybe there's a question as, no, she's not in. That's the third line. So it means that once you finish with your greeting, you'll say something. I was asking if the principal is in, so that the question now can follow the answer. The answer can follow the question you've asked. So that is the expectations as far as oral skills is concerned. A parting shot about oral skills. And again, this is something, of course, we'll discuss at length in classes and with our teachers with relevant papers, is that questions that are asking or referring to you, what would you do? How would you prepare? How would you present, or how would you prepare for a speech? How would you prepare for an interview? The most important thing you need to know is that when you are answering those kind of questions, you need to personalize your answers. That I would do, I would do. Students have failed to score points with the correct answers because they did not personalize their answers. So all in all, that is the long and short of what to expect in oral skills. I know there could be many questions. I might not fill all of them because of time. Maybe there's this question here. In the paper 1 exam, a question asked, state whether intonation rises or falls in the following. Should you write the answer as simply as it rises, it falls, or should you give the answer? Just give it in full. Just give it in full. Falling intonation, rising intonation, no problem. There is no, you're not going to, you could write it rises or falls, but just write falling intonation, rising intonation. No question, no problem with that. Answer the question. Are the answers for oral skills questions static or other answers can chip in? I didn't get this one. We basically, what if you pick the silent letter out and underline it as well? Okay, silent letter, if you underline it and pick it out, no problem. Just remember, never put it in the slanted marks, because that's a whole different thing. Yeah, you can pick it out and underline it so that it's clear. That's okay, no problem with that. What about the last E in cheese? I would have to check that. I do not know if there is a silent letter in cheese, but that one I would have to confirm. I cannot 100% say it's that or not that. Are the answers for oral skills questions static or other answers can chip in? I didn't get this one. But what are the questions I have given you? Those questions I've listed down. Expect those questions. They might be twisted, but basically the structure and the expectations are same or similar. Those questions I've read about oral skills and oral poems, you will find a question in relation to that or close to that. That is expected. They might change the structure, they might change, or they might twist it around, but the expectation and the questions are basically that. That's what is expected. Now, I have not been able to get the last slide for it's on my phone. Unfortunately, I can't send it to the laptop I'm using. The last slide for conclusion that I had said I would get one. But essentially what I read to you is basically what's in the slide, that what you expect or what's expected of you. I couldn't manage to send it to the slide to this for screen sharing as I had promised. But that's it. That's basically what is expected from the conclusion. So if there is no question, I think I would like to end the session there so that I can allow the next lesson to begin. If there's a question, maybe one or two questions so that we do not delve into the next lesson. All right. I assume silence is consent. We are all okay on the same page.
Yes.
Okay. So have yourselves a good Monday. Have yourselves a good week and enjoy the remaining part of your holiday. See you next time.
Same.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Metro.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Au revoir.
Bienvenido.
Au revoir, Bujon.